The reunion, the crystal chandeliers of the Meridian Hotel, cast dancing shadows across the marble floor as Alina Rosewood balanced another tray of champagne glasses. Her black uniform felt suffocating in the opulent ballroom where Manhattan's elite gathered for the annual Children's Hope Foundation Gala. The irony wasn't lost on her that she was serving drinks to people who spent more on a single piece of jewelry than she made in a year. Alina tucked a strand of auburn hair behind her ear and forced a polite smile as she approached a group of donors. These events paid well enough to cover her rent for 2 months, but they also reminded her daily of the dream she'd abandoned 5 years ago. She'd been a promising art student with exhibitions lined up and a future that seemed bright with possibility. Now at 27, she was just another struggling artist in a city that chewed up dreamers and spat them out. "Excuse me, miss?" called a woman dripping in diamonds. "Could you bring us some of those delicious canapes?" "Of course, ma'am," Alina replied, her voice steady, despite the exhaustion creeping into her bones. She'd been on her feet for 6 hours already, and the night was far from over. She made her way toward the kitchen. The master of ceremonies stepped up to the podium. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our keynote speaker and the evening's most generous benefactor, Damian Cross, CEO of Cross Industries." Alina's blood turned to ice, and her hands wobbled dangerously as applause filled the room. She hadn't heard that name spoken aloud in years, though it haunted her thoughts daily. Slowly, as if moving through quicksand, she turned toward the stage. There he was. Damian Cross stood at the podium with the same confident posture she remembered, though 5 years had added breadth to his shoulders and silver to his temples. His dark hair was shorter now, styled with the precision that money could buy. The boy she'd known in college had been handsome, but the man before her was devastating. Success had carved sharp angles into his face, and his steel gray eyes held a coldness that hadn't existed when they were 22. Alina's heart hammered against her ribs as memories crashed over her like a violent wave. Late nights in the library, his fingers intertwined with hers. The way he used to trace her face in the morning light streaming through her dorm window. The promises whispered in the darkness about building a future together. All lies, she forced herself to breathe, to remember where she was and why she was here. This was her job. She needed this money. Whatever Damian Cross had become, whatever empire he'd built after walking away from her without a word, it had nothing to do with her life now. "Children are our greatest investment in the future," Damian's voice carried clearly across the ballroom, rich and commanding. That's why Cross Industries is proud to announce a $10 million commitment to the Children's Hope Foundation. The crowd erupted in applause, but Alina barely heard it. She was too busy trying to disappear into the shadows along the wall, praying he wouldn't see her. But even as she thought it, she knew it was futile. In a room full of people, her eyes had found him instantly. It was only a matter of time before his founder. "This foundation represents hope," Damian continued, his gaze sweeping across the audience. "Hope for children who have been forgotten, abandoned," or his voice faltered almost imperceptibly as his eyes locked with hers across the crowded room. Alina watched the color drain from his face, saw the moment recognition hit him like a physical blow. For a heartbeat that lasted an eternity, they stared at each other across the years and the hurt and the distance that had grown between them. "Abandoned," he finished quietly, his voice barely carrying to the back of the room. Lena's hands shook as she set down her tray on a nearby table. She couldn't do this. Not here. Not now. Not ever. She turned toward the service exit, but her legs felt like water. The room spun around her, conversations blending into a meaningless buzz. "Alina." She froze. Her name on his lips sounded exactly as it had 5 years ago, wrapped in an intimacy that felt like a knife twisting in her chest. She didn't turn around, couldn't bear to see him up close, to smell his cologne or see the way his eyes crinkled when he was thinking. "Alina, please." The plea in his voice broke something inside her. She'd imagined this moment 1,000 times, had practiced what she would say if she ever saw him again. But now, with him standing behind her, she found herself speechless. "Can't," she whispered, not trusting her voice to be stronger. "Please, just 5 minutes." She felt the weight of curious eyes on them, the whispered speculations of the wealthy elite who lived for gossip. Alina Rosewood, nobody waitress, being approached by Damian Cross, billionaire philanthropist. It would be the talk of the social circuit for weeks. 5 minutes, she said without turning around. The terrace. After your speech, she didn't wait for his response. She walked away on unsteady legs, past the curious stares, and whispered conversations past the life she'd built from the ashes of her broken dreams. 20 minutes later, she stood on the hotel's terrace, the city lights blurring through her tears as she waited for the man who had once been her entire world to explain why he had chosen to destroy it. The past unfolds, the cool night air wrapped around Alina like an embrace. But it couldn't warm the ice that had settled in her chest. She gripped the terrace railing as memories flooded back like a dam bursting. Columbia University, fall semester of her junior year. She'd been rushing to her art history class when she'd literally crashed into him outside the library, sending her sketches flying across the courtyard like autumn leaves. "I'm so sorry," he'd said, dropping to his knees to gather her drawings. When he looked up at her, those gray eyes had been warm, not cold like they were now. "These are incredible. You drew all of these?" She'd been too flustered to speak properly. Watching this gorgeous guy in his expensive clothes, carefully collecting her work like it was precious. Most people walked past struggling artists without a second glance, but Damian had studied each sketch with genuine interest. "You have real talent," he'd said, standing up and handing her the drawings. "I'm Damian, by the way, business major, but I wish I had half your creativity." That's how it started. Coffee after her classes turned into dinner dates. Study sessions in the library became long walks through Central Park. He'd never made her feel like the scholarship kid from Brooklyn who worked 3 jobs to afford textbooks. Instead, he'd made her feel like the most fascinating person in his world. For 2 years, they'd been inseparable. He'd come to every one of her art shows, no matter how small or poorly attended. She'd helped him through his hardest business courses, turning economic theories into stories he could understand. They'd talked about everything, dreamed together, about the future they'd build. "Want to start my own company someday," he'd told her one night as they lay on her tiny dorm bed, her head on his chest. "Something that matters, you know, not just making money, but making a difference." "You will," she'd whispered, tracing circles on his skin. "I'll paint the most beautiful art for your offices." "Our offices," he'd corrected, pressing a kiss. To her hair. "We're a team, Alina. Whatever I build, it'll be ours." The night he proposed had been perfect, and nothing fancy, just the two of them on the roof of her building, the city spread out below them like a glittering promise. The ring had been simple, a small diamond he'd saved for months to buy. "I know I don't have much to offer you right now," he'd said, his voice shaking slightly. "But I love you, Alina. I want to build a life with you, create something beautiful together." She'd said yes without hesitation. They'd planned a small wedding after graduation. Nothing elaborate since neither of them had money for grand gestures. Her art was gaining recognition, and several galleries had expressed interest in her work. Damian had received early acceptance to Harvard's MBA program. Everything was falling into place. Till it wasn't. Change had been subtle at first. Phone calls he wouldn't take in front of her. Dinners canceled at the last minute. When she'd asked about it, he'd grown distant, claimed he was just stressed about school applications and his father's expectations. Then came the night that shattered everything. "I can't do this anymore," he'd said, standing in her dorm room doorway, like he was afraid to come inside. His face had been pale, his usual confidence nowhere to be found. "Can't do what?" she'd asked, though her heart had already started breaking before he answered. "This us. I'm not ready for marriage, Alina. I'm 22 years old, and I have my whole life ahead of me. I can't tie myself down to one person right now." The words had hit her like physical blows. Where is this coming from? "Last week, you were talking about honeymoon destinations." "I was caught up in the moment," he'd said, not meeting her eyes. "But I've been thinking, really thinking, and this isn't what I want anymore." "What about Harvard? We were going to move to Boston." "Together," I deferred. "I'm taking a year off to figure things out." She'd stared at him, searching his face for any sign of the man who'd promised to love her forever. "Is there someone else?" "No," he'd said quickly. This isn't about another woman. It's about me needing space to grow, to become who I'm supposed to be, and who you're supposed to be doesn't include me. He'd flinched at the pain in her voice, but hadn't denied it. I'm sorry, Alina. I really am. She'd thrown the engagement ring at him, watched it bounce off his chest and roll across the floor. Get out, and he had. He'd picked up the ring, looked at her one last time with something that might have been regret, and walked out of her life forever, or so she'd thought. The terrace door opened behind her, and Alina didn't need to turn around to know he was there. She could feel his presence like electricity in the air, the same way she always had. You came, she said, her voice steadier than she felt. I said I would. She turned to face him finally, this man who'd become a stranger wearing a familiar face. Up close, she could see the lines around his eyes, the way success had hardened him. But underneath it all, she caught a glimpse of the boy who'd collected her drawings with such care. You look good, he said quietly. Different, but good. Different how? Stronger. Independent. Like you don't need anyone anymore. Alina laughed. Bitterly. I learned not to need anyone the night you walked away. The words hung between them like a challenge. Damian stepped closer, and she caught a hint of his cologne, the same one he'd worn in college. Some things, apparently, never changed. Alina, I don't, she said, holding up her hand. Don't you dare apologize now. Not after 5 years of silence. I tried to find you after graduation, he said. You disappeared. Changed your phone number, moved apartments, no social media presence. It was like you'd vanished. I had to. Disappear. Staying in that city, going to the same places we used to go, it was killing me, piece by piece. They stood in silence for a moment, the weight of 5 years of unspoken words pressing down on them. Why? She finally asked. Why did you really leave? Don't give me that speech about needing space to grow. I deserved the truth then, and I deserve it now. Ow. Damian looked out over the city lights, his jaw tight. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. Because my father threatened to disown me if I married you. The truth revealed, Alina felt the world tilt beneath her feet. Of all the reasons she'd imagined, all the scenarios she'd played out in her mind over the years, this hadn't been one of them. What? She whispered. Damian turned to face her fully, his expression raw with old pain. My father found out about our engagement. Someone saw us at dinner and told him. He called me into his office the next day and laid it out very clearly. Marry you, and I'd be cut off completely. No inheritance, no family business, no support of any kind. Alina stared at him, trying to process what he was saying. So you chose money over love? No, he said fiercely. I chose you. First. I told him I didn't care about his money, that I'd make my own way. I was ready to start over with nothing if it meant keeping you. Then what changed? Damian ran a hand through his hair, the gesture so familiar it made her chest ache. He didn't just threaten me, Alina. He threatened you. The blood drained. From her face? What do you mean? He knew about your art shows, your scholarship, everything? He said he had connections at every major gallery in New York. One word from him. You'd never work in the art world again. He'd make sure your scholarship was revoked, that you'd never finish your degree. Alina's hands began to shake. You're lying. I wish I were. He had photos, Alina. Photos of us together. Your class schedule. Andy, our work schedule at the campus coffee shop. He'd been having you investigated for weeks. She wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly cold despite the warm evening air. So you just gave up on us. I tried to fight it, Damian said, his voice breaking. I spent 3 weeks trying to find a way around it. I contacted lawyers, looked into restraining orders, anything to stop him. But he had too much power, too many connections. Every door I tried to open, he'd already closed. Should have told me, Alina said, tears streaming down her face. We could have figured it out together. How? By watching him destroy your future, by forcing you to choose between your dreams and me? That should have been my choice to make. And watch you sacrifice everything for me. You give up your art, your education, your future. I couldn't do that to you. Alina turned away from him, her mind reeling. So instead, Ya chose for me. You decided what I could and couldn't handle. I was trying to protect you. You were trying to protect yourself, she snapped, whirling to face him. Yeah. You were a coward who took the easy way out rather than fight. For what we had. Damian flinched as if she'd slapped him. There was no easy way out, Alina. Losing you nearly destroyed me. Oh, poor you, she said bitterly. It must have been so hard going to Harvard, building your empire, becoming a billionaire. My heart really bleeds for your suffering. I never went to Harvard, he said quietly. She stopped, confused. What? I never went to Harvard. I moved to Silicon Valley with $5,000 and started a tech company in my friend's garage. Worked 18-hour days for 3 years, slept on a couch, ate ramen noodles for every meal. I built Cross Industries from nothing because I couldn't stand the thought of taking anything from him. Alina stared at him, processing this new information. Your father cut me off completely when I refused to marry Patricia Wellington. He'd already picked out my future wife, someone from the right family with the right connections. When I chose neither you nor her, he wrote me out of his will and told me I was no son of his. Patricia Wellington, Alina repeated, the name familiar. The pharmaceutical heiress. She's my wife now, Damian said, and the words hit Alina like a physical blow. Your wife? It's not what you think, he said quickly, seeing her expression. It's a business arrangement, nothing more. We get married 2 years ago to merge our companies. We don't even live in the same house, Alina laughed, but there was no humor in it. A business arrangement. It's how romantic. There's nothing romantic about it. We're partners on paper. Nothing more. Patricia has her own life, her own interests. Our marriage gives her social standing and gives me access to the pharmaceutical market. It works for both of us. How cold and practical, Alina said. Just like you've become. Damian stepped closer, his eyes intense. You think I'm cold? You think I don't feel anything? I thought about you every single day for 5 years, Alina. Every success I've achieved, every milestone I've reached, the first thing I think is how much I wish you were there to share it with me. Then why didn't you come find me sooner? 'Cause I thought you were better off without me. I thought you'd moved on. Found someone who could give you the life you deserved without all the complications that come with being involved with me. Alina shook her head, exhausted by the revelations. You don't get to decide what's better for me. Don't get to make those choices. I know that now, he said softly, seeing you tonight. Seeing what you've had to do to survive, I realize. I made the wrong choice. I should have trusted you enough to let you decide for yourself. 5 years too late for that realization. They stood in silence, the weight of everything unsaid hanging between them. The city sprawled below them, millions of lights twinkling, like fallen stars, but Alina had never felt more alone. What happens now? She asked finally. Damian looked at her with such longing that it made her chest ache. I don't know. I want to make things right, but I don't know how. Some things can't be fixed, Damian. Some wounds cut too deep. I have to try, he said. Spent 5 years building an empire, but none of it means anything without you. I'll leave Patricia, give up everything if that's what it takes. It's not that simple, Alina said, though her heart was beating faster at his words. You can't just walk back into my life and expect everything to be the same. I know that. But I'm not the same person who walked away from you 5 years ago. I've learned what really matters, what's worth fighting for. Before she could respond, her phone buzzed. A text from her roommate. Emergency at the gallery. Your painting sold. Call me now. Alina stared at the message, her breath catching. After 5 years of struggling, of serving drinks and cleaning, houses to pay rent, someone had finally bought one of her paintings. Good news? Damian asked, noticing her expression. My painting sold, she said, still in shock. I have a small exhibition at a gallery in Brooklyn. It's nothing fancy, but it's everything, he finished, understanding immediately, Alina. That's incredible. You never gave up on your art. I couldn't, she said simply. It was the only part of myself I had left after you took everything. Else the words hung between them, heavy with accusation and pain. Damian's face crumpled, and for a moment, he looked like the 22-year-old boy who'd proposed to her on a rooftop, vulnerable and desperately in love. I'm sorry, he whispered. I'm so sorry for what I took from you, for what I cost us both. Alina looked at him, at this man who'd once been her whole world, and felt something shift inside her chest. The anger was still there. The hurt would always be there. But underneath it all was something else, something that felt dangerously like hope. The choice, the silence stretched between them, filled with the weight of 5 years of separation and the possibility of something new. Alina's phone buzzed again, this time with a call from her roommate Maya. I have to take this, she said, stepping away from Damian. Alina. Maya's voice was breathless with excitement. You're not going to believe this? Not only did your painting sell, but the buyer wants to commission a series. They're offering $50,000. Alina's knees nearly buckled. 1,000? Are you sure I'm holding the check right now? The buyer insisted on remaining anonymous, but they left specific instructions. They want 12 paintings, all in your signature style. This is it, Alina. This is your break. When she hung up, Damian was watching her with an expression she couldn't read. Anonymous buyer, he said quietly. The realization hit her like a slap. You bought it. Alina, you bought my painting, she said, her voice rising. How dare you? How dare you waltz back into my life and try to fix everything with money? It's not about the money, he said desperately. I saw the exhibition. Online. I've been following your work for years. That painting. It's beautiful. It deserves to be seen, to be valued. You've been following my work? She stared at him, feeling exposed and violated. For how long? Since I found your website 2 years ago. I never contacted you, never interfered, but I couldn't stop myself from checking on you. I needed to. No, you were okay. And when you realized I wasn't okay, that I was struggling, you decided to play savior. I wanted to help sooner, but I didn't know how. I thought if I contacted you directly, you'd refuse. So I waited, hoping someone else would recognize your talent. But no one did, Alina said bitterly, because the art world is exactly as brutal as your father promised it would be. Damian's face darkened. My father died 3 years ago. Heart attack. I went to his funeral, stood at his grave, and all I could think about was how much I hated him for what he cost us. The revelation stunned her. I'm sorry, don't be. He chose his path, and I chose mine. But his death made me realize something.
Yes.
I'd been so focused on proving I could succeed without him that I'd forgotten what I was really fighting for. Was you. It was always you. Alina felt tears threatening again. Can't just say things like that and expect it to fix everything. I know, but I had to try. When I saw you tonight, when I realized you were serving drinks at a gala where I was donating $10 million, I understood how badly I'd failed you. How my choice to protect you had actually destroyed you. I survived, she said fiercely. I made a life for myself. Surviving isn't living, Alina. And you deserved so much more than just survival. Before she could respond, her phone rang. Again, this time it was her gallery owner, Marcus. Alina, darling, you need to get down here immediately. I have 3 more buyers interested in your work, and there's a reporter from Art News who wants to interview you. Whatever you did to get, noticed it's working. When she hung up, Damian was smiling sadly. Fame and fortune, just like we used to dream about. This isn't how I wanted it to happen, she said, but it is happening. Your talent is being recognized. Your work is being valued. Isn't that what matters? She studied his face. Searching for answers she wasn't sure she wanted to find.
What do you want from me, Damian?
Really? I want a chance, he said simply. A chance to prove that I'm not the same man who walked away from you. A chance to earn back your trust, your love, if that's even possible. And what about Patricia? Your business arrangement, I'll end it. The merger was important, but not. As important as this, not as important as you. You'd give up everything you've built? I'd give up everything to have you back in my life. The question is, would you want to be there? Alina looked out over the city at the lights that had once seemed so full of promise. She thought about the girl she'd been 5 years ago, naive and trusting and desperately in love. She thought about the woman she'd become, hardened by disappointment, but still holding on to hope. I don't know, she said honestly. I don't know if I can trust you again. I don't know if I can trust myself with you. Then let me show you, Damian said, taking a step closer. Let me prove that I've changed, that I'm worthy of a second chance. And if you're not, if you hurt me again, then I'll live with that guilt for the rest of my life. But I have to try, Alina. I can't spend another 5 years wondering what might have been. She looked at him, this man who'd once been her everything, who'd broken her heart and was now asking her to risk it again. Part of her wanted to run, to protect herself from the possibility of more pain. But another part, a part that had been sleeping for 5 years, was beginning to wake up. One chance, she said finally. One chance to prove you've changed. On my terms, at my pace. Anything, he said, relief flooding his features. I mean it, Damian. I won't be your secret again. I won't be hidden away while you figure out what you want. We do this, we do it openly, honestly. I want nothing more than to shout from the rooftops that Alina Rosewood has given me a second chance. Despite herself, Alina smiled. It was the first real smile she'd given him all evening, and the effect on his face was devastating. Get ahead of yourself, she said. I said one chance, not a guarantee. I'll take what I can get, he said softly. When can I see you again? Tomorrow. The gallery opening. If you're serious about this, about us, then be there. Not as the anonymous buyer, not as the philanthropist writing checks, but as the man who claims he's changed. I'll be there, he promised. Good. She turned to go, then paused. Damian, yeah, thank you. For the painting, for the commission, for giving me a chance to be seen. Even if this doesn't work out between us, you've given me my dream back. You gave me mine first, he said. 5 years ago, when you said yes to spending forever with me, I'm the one who threw it away. Then don't throw it away again. She said, and walked back into the hotel, leaving him standing alone on the terrace with the city lights and the weight of his second chance. The gallery opening, the Brooklyn Gallery, buzzed with an energy Alina had never experienced before. Her paintings lined the walls, each one illuminated by perfect lighting that made the colors seem to glow from within. People clustered around, her work discussing brushstrokes and color theory, and for the first time in 5 years, Alina felt like an artist again, instead of a survivor. Darling, you're glowing, Marcus said, appearing at her elbow with a glass of champagne. 3 more sales in the last hour? The Times critic wants to feature you in Sunday's art section? Alina smiled, but her eyes kept drifting to the entrance. It was nearly 8 o'clock, and the opening had started at 6. Maybe Damian had changed his mind. Maybe last night had been about guilt and nostalgia, not genuine feeling. Looking for someone? Maya asked, joining them. Maybe, Alina admitted. I'm not sure he'll come. The mysterious buyer? It's complicated. The best things usually are, Maya said, then grabbed Alina's arm. Oh my God, is that Damian Cross? Alina turned to see him standing in the doorway, not in the expensive suit from the gala, but in dark jeans and a simple gray sweater. He looked younger, more like the boy she'd fallen in love with in college. Their eyes met across the crowded room, and he smiled tentatively. I'll be right back, Alina, told Maya, weaving through the crowd toward him. Oh. You came, she said when she reached him. I promised I would. He looked around the gallery, taking in the crowd, the energy, and the obvious success of the evening. This is incredible, Alina. You did it. We both know I had help. You had talent. You had vision. You'd heard to keep creating even when the world told you to give up. The rest was just money. Before she could respond, a reporter approached them. Ms. Rosewood. I'm Sarah Chen from Art News. Could I get a quick interview? Of course, Alina said, but she looked at Damian uncertainly. Go, he said. I'll wait. She watched him walk over to study one of her paintings, a piece she'd created 2 years ago during a particularly difficult period. It was all dark blues and grays, with a single spot of golden light in the center. She'd called it hope in the darkness, and seeing him stand before it now felt like a sign. The interview went well. Sarah asked about her process, her inspiration, her plans for the future. It wasn't until the end that she mentioned Damian. I noticed Damian Cross is here tonight. Any connection to the tech mogul? Lena's heart skipped. She could lie, protect them both from scrutiny, and keep things simple, but she'd told him no more secrets, no more hiding. "We knew each other in college," she said simply. "He's here to support my work. That's quite an endorsement." It will cross. Industries be supporting more emerging artists. You'd have to ask him that. When the interview ended, Alina found Damian still standing in front of her painting. "What do you see?" she asked. "You," he said without hesitation. "I see you fighting to find light in the darkness. I see the strength it must have taken. To paint this, to keep believing in tomorrow when today felt impossible. I painted it after I saw your engagement announcement in the society pages," she said quietly. "You and Patricia. I knew it was business, but it still hurt. I'm sorry. I never wanted to hurt you more than I already had. I know. It's what made it so much worse." They stood in silence for a moment, both lost in their own thoughts. Then Damian spoke again. "I ended it, the marriage. Patricia and I signed the papers this morning." Lena stared at him. "You what?" "I told her I couldn't continue the arrangement." She wasn't surprised. She said she'd been waiting for me to realize I was still in love with someone else. "Damian, you didn't have to." "Yes, I did. I told you I'd changed, that I was ready to fight for us. I can't do that while I'm married to someone else, even if it's just on paper." "What about the merger?" "Your business. I'll figure it out. There are other ways to grow a company, other partnerships to explore. But there's only one you, Alina, and I'm not losing you again." Before she could respond, Marcus appeared with another potential buyer. "Alina, darling, this is Mrs. Whitney from the Whitney Museum. She's interested in discussing a solo exhibition." The rest of the evening passed in a blur of introductions, sales, and congratulations. Damian stayed through it all, not hovering, or trying to insert himself into conversations, but simply being present. When someone asked about his connection to the artist, he said simply, "I'm a long-time admirer of her work." By the time the last guest left, Alina was exhausted but exhilarated. She'd sold 8 paintings, scheduled 3 interviews, and had a museum curator interested in her work. More importantly, she'd done it all as herself, not hiding behind anonymity or someone else's connections. "Ready to go?" Damian asked as she gathered her things. "Where are we going?" "Coffee, dinner, and a walk through the city. I just want to spend time with you." She considered this, studying his face in the soft gallery lighting. "There's a diner near my apartment. Nothing fancy, but they make good coffee." They walked through Brooklyn as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. The diner was exactly as she'd described it, small and unpretentious, with cracked vinyl booths and a waitress who called everyone hun. "This is nice," Damian said, settling into the booth across from her. "Real? Not what you're used to anymore?" "No, but it's what I missed. What I lost when I chose success over substance." Their coffee arrived, and they sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Finally, Alina spoke. "I need to know something. When you walked away 5 years ago, did you love me?" "Yes," he said without hesitation. "I loved you more than I thought it was possible to love another person. That's why it hurt so much to leave. And now I know the difference between loving someone and being in love with them. 5 years ago, I loved you, but I was young and scared, and I let that fear make my decisions for me. Now I'm in love with the woman you've become, the strength you've developed, the art you've created despite everything that tried to stop you. I'm scared," she admitted. "I'm scared of trusting you again, of letting you back into my life only to have you leave when things get difficult." "I'm scared too," he said. "I'm scared I'll mess this up again, that I'm not worthy of a second chance. But I'm more scared of living the rest of my life without you in it." Alina reached across the table and took his hand. His fingers were warm, familiar, and she felt something she hadn't experienced in years, the possibility of home. "We'll take it slow," she said. "We'll figure it out as we go." "I'd like that," he said, lifting her hand to his lips and pressing a gentle kiss to her knuckles. "I'd like that very much." As they walked back to her apartment, Alina felt lighter than she had in years. The city lights twinkled around them like stars, and for the first time since that night 5 years ago, the future felt full of possibility, instead of just survival. "Alina," Damian stopped walking and turned to face her. "Thank you for giving me this chance, for forgiving me enough to try again. I know I don't deserve it." "Maybe you don't," she said with a small smile. "But maybe that's not the point. Maybe the point is that some things are worth fighting for, even when they're scary." "Especially when they're scary," he agreed, and leaned down to kiss her forehead. As they stood there on the sidewalk, surrounded by the sounds and lights of the city that had both broken and remade them, Alina felt something she'd thought was lost forever. Hope. Not just for her art or her career, but for love, for partnership, for the kind of future she'd once dreamed of building with the man beside her. It wouldn't be easy. They had years of hurt to work through, trust to rebuild, a relationship to construct from the ashes of what they'd once had. But as Damian's hand found hers and they continued walking toward her apartment, toward whatever came next, Alina knew they would face it together. Some stories, she realized, were worth rewriting. Some loves were worth fighting for. And some second chances, when given with an open heart and honest intentions, could bloom into something even more beautiful than what came before. The end asterisk liked this video. If the story touched your heart, subscribe for more emotional tales, and share with someone who believes in the power of true love. And let us know in the comments.
Ow.
We love connecting with our global community of romance lovers.